Today is the eve of Rosh Hashanah, the start of the year for the Jewish people. And though I am a Unitarian Universalist, I and many of my people are Jews. The common greeting amongst Jews at this time is Shana Tova, meaning for a good year. This is the shortening of Shana Tova Tikatevu, which means may you be inscribed for a good year. It seems right that I greet you at the eve of a new year and at the beginning of such a great adventure for your community. Thus, I begin my sermon with these words from the Reverend Deborah Hafner. She's a UU minister serving the congregation in Reston, Virginia. A new year for beloved community. Happy New Year, Shana Tova. Happy New Year for our beloved community. Happy new school year. We gather together at the start of this new year as a people of many ages, as people of many sexual orientations and gender identities, as people of many races and ethnicities, as people of many theologies and religious backgrounds, woven together in our love for this community, with our hopes and dreams and prayers for the year before us, with our hearts and minds and spirits ready to be touched by the year before us, with our hands and time and talents ready to be offered in the year before us. We gather at the start of this new year with gratitude and love for those who have come before us, for those who stand here with us. May it be a good year. May it be a sweet year. Come, let us worship together.
Our reading this morning is an excerpt from a sermon called The Land of Enough by Cecilia Kingman, Rachel's minister and my dear friend. She writes, "Our culture is fascinated with money. We all know the degree to which money is the real religion of America. Yet someone recently asked me, isn't the first rule of stewardship to never talk about money? I was not surprised to hear this, as it's been the practice in churches for a long time. Don't talk about money, you'll only make people uncomfortable. Yet I disagree. I think we're longing to talk about money, even in our discomfort. In church, we grapple with life's most profound matters: justice, death, the nature of humanity, even the existence or non-existence of God. Yet the subject of money rarely comes up. In many churches, it's easier to talk about sex than finances. Yes, we speak of poverty, of global economics, and perhaps share our concerns about paying for retirement. But when do we speak of our deepest worries and fears, about the making and spending of our money? Each of us has questions in a culture that shapes us to be consumers before anything else. How do we make financial choices that are in line with our own values? How do we teach our children's life's meaning? How do we teach our children life's meaning in a society that emphasizes appearances and accumulation? What is our responsibility to the poor? What if I become poor? These are profoundly religious questions of ethics, human worth, and security. And church is the best place for these discussions, gathered with others who share our values. Our congregations can provide a place to examine our materialist culture, to speak truthfully about our questions and struggles, to perhaps even be vulnerable in these questions, and to comfort and encourage one another along the way. This is the first step of religious stewardship.
I am before you today because I serve your congregation as a stewardship consultant, helping you make your way through a successful capital campaign so that you can more fully live your vision of beloved community. So you can create a facility that is truly welcoming, radically welcoming, to young and old, to your community, to all who need the respite, the embrace, and the power of your progressive, liberal, religious home. I am here because we live in a world that could not possibly need you more. I met Reverend Elizabeth during an action with the Poor People's Campaign, during which we were both arrested. And judging from my experiences with many of you this last year and this, and you and she are a really good fit. Committed, joyful, generous, and putting your bodies in service of creating a more just and sustainable world. A world that is anchored in love. I spend a lot of my time talking to people about their values and their money. And I call money a tool, simply a tool we can use to create value. To be clear, money itself is not value. In this regard, I feel a kinship with a philanthropic fella named Edgar Villanueva, the author of a book called Decolonizing Wealth. And he writes, "You don't choose medicine, it chooses you. The medicine that has chosen me is money." Money is medicine? How could that be? He goes on to say, because I mean money, come on, money corrupts. Money is dirty. Money is the root of all evil. Doesn't the Bible say that? Villanueva points out that in fact, the Bible doesn't say money is the root of all evil. It says the love of money is the root of all evil. Villanueva says that money is inherently value neutral, but humans have used money wrongfully. He tells us that we have made money more important than human life. We've allowed it to divide us, and that, he says, is a sin. But Villanueva also gives us some tools for healing our relationship with money. For instance, he suggests we can learn to see money as a tool of love, to help us thrive, to restore our relationships with one another, to use as medicine. I believe that money can be a tool to help us create beloved community, especially when we work together to direct its flow. You already work together as a congregation to direct the flow of your money toward creating all that happens around this place. You educate, embrace, and enlist each other in the work of creating beloved community through your annual gifts. You work together to direct the flow of your money toward the community through your Sunday plate offerings. And you are about to launch a capital campaign to make your facility more open and welcoming, to create that beloved community in a facility, in a built environment. You are working together to direct your money to creating that beloved community. Together, you make a built environment that reflects your values and your love. No one of you could do it alone. Even if one of you had the money to finance the whole project, it wouldn't reflect the power of your collective vision without everyone being involved. Together, your power is immense. And working together to use your money can heal your spirit and the world. One way we can start using money as medicine is to share our money stories with each other. We might start with a simple question like, as a child, what was the first thing you saved up for? When was the first time you purchased a gift for someone? Or what is your earliest memory of money in childhood? Was it positive? Was it negative? Where do money and faith and religion connect for you? I'm going to share some of my money stories with you. The first money story is from when I was a young mother of 2 at home because I'd left the art world and was busy with babies, and my family was struggling financially. One day, I was complaining about my financial woes to a buddy of mine in a 2-income household, both corporate lawyers. And she said that she thought everyone feels they don't have enough money. It wasn't just me. No matter how much you have, she said, it's never enough. That moment sparked one of the greatest epiphanies of my life. Enough. What is enough? I felt the truth in her words that most people feel they don't have enough, whether they are rich or poor by the world's standards. My epiphany was this: I have enough. I am so rich. I have the love of my family and my friends. I have a community. I have enough. I have enough food. I have shelter. I even had health care. So I actively chose to identify myself as having enough money. Because my culture, our culture, is constantly suggesting, really pushing, the idea that we don't have enough. And people are buying that, buying stuff and that feeling that they don't have enough. We have to actively choose to identify ourselves as having enough. Lynn Twist, the author of The Soul of Money, writes, like water, money is a carrier. It can carry blessed energy, possibility, and intention, or it can carry control, domination, or guilt. It can be a current or currency of love, a conduit of commitment, or a carrier of hurt or harm. So I ask you, how does money flow through your life? Does it carry possibility, intention, control, guilt? Like water, money is a carrier. It can carry blessed energy, possibility, and intention, or it can carry control, domination, or guilt. It can be a current or currency of love, a conduit for commitment, or a carrier of hurt or harm. I am reading Edgar Villanueva's book, the one I've already shared quotes from, the title, Decolonizing Wealth. In that book, Villanueva writes, across American history and through the present day, the accumulation of wealth is steeped in trauma. As I get to know you all, I'm observing one small reflection of that trauma, that American wealth trauma, around your culture of secrecy related to money. do we feel trauma about money? Is it fear? Is it shame? What have our money stories told us? How have they harmed us? Here's another story of mine. When I was a young adult, I asked my brother how much he earned. What was his salary? This was shortly after he had gotten a new job in a corporate law firm. In clipped tones, he answered, "We don't talk about money." Really? I thought, we're family. We don't talk about money. But I was too afraid to say those things out loud. My beloved brother said we don't talk about money, so I didn't. And even though I'm in the business of talking about money, my trauma still shows up. Telling you this story today, my gut reaction is to defend myself. I wasn't being aggressive, I wasn't being hostile, I wasn't angry at my brother for earning a lot of money. I was just curious. My defensiveness makes me want to explain to you that my brother and I had a wonderful relationship. We talked about important things. So why do I feel like I have to justify that I asked my brother what his salary was? Why do I feel like I have to justify that story to you today? I think that was cultural trauma around wealth. Like Lynn Twist, who wrote The Soul of Money, Villanueva says that money is like water. He writes, water can be a precious, life-giving resource. But what happens when water is dammed? Or when a water cannon is fired in protesters in sub-zero weather? Money should be a tool of love, he says, to facilitate relationships, to help us thrive rather than to hurt and divide us. If it's used for sacred life-giving, restorative purposes, it can be medicine. Money can be medicine. What a wonderful thing to think about. Okay, one more Rachel money story. This one is about money as medicine. When I was in jail, after being arrested in Seattle for the Poor People's Campaign at a different time than I was arrested with Reverend Elizabeth.
5 times.
Anyway, I met a woman who had also been thrown in the women's holding cell. Truthfully, the moment she arrived in the cell, I was terrified. I had never been in jail before. I'd never been inside or outside of a holding cell. Just a few hours before this woman showed up in the holding cell, or tank as they call it, I had been lying in the street at the intersection of 6th and Union in downtown Seattle, singing songs. There were only 7 of us risking arrest that day, and arrested we were. Handcuffed, hauled off in a paddy wagon to some precinct, and then hauled to the King County Jail, an imposing building just blocks from where we had been protesting. I don't know where in the jail the holding cell was. There were no windows anywhere. I don't know what time it was when we got there, because there aren't any clocks either. But we were arrested and then brought in, and then we had to take off all our clothes and put on prison garb, right down to the underwear. I never thought about that. Have you ever thought about that? I had to take my underwear off. They give you brown underwear and cranberry red scrubs. We went through a series of experiences in the hours before this woman showed up that were unnerving and humiliating. We'd been questioned and trained in the way of the Prison Rape Prevention Act. Ask me about that one some other time. Suffice it to say, it was all pretty terrifying to this never previously a criminal person. So there we were, the 5 women who had been arrested with the Poor People's Campaign action, one of whom was my minister, the Reverend Cecilia Kingman, when someone new arrives. And I think to myself, she must be a criminal. She has long, disheveled hair, and she is crying. She came in and she immediately sat in the corner as far away from the rest of us as possible, near the toilet. Did I tell you there's an open toilet in the holding cell? That's the place where you can go to the bathroom. Anyway, there she was, a young Latina woman, crying, mascara all down her face. So Reverend Cecilia gently says hello and introduces herself and the rest of us, and she asks the woman her name. Mari, she says. I'm still terrified. Cecilia says she's a minister and would Mari like us to pray with her? And so we do. And that makes me feel less afraid. Mari, it turns out, is in because she and her husband were stopped for having a plastic license plate cover on their license plate in Bellevue, Washington. I might call that for driving while Latinx. And they both had had warrants out for not having kept up with payments on fines for previous traffic violations. Now Mari's terrified for her husband because he has PTSD and she has no idea where they took him. And she's got 3 little girls, ages 5 and under at home, and a job she was supposed to get to tomorrow. We share what we can with her, and all of us try to make calls. When I manage to speak to my spouse for one of the calls, Cecilia nudges me and says, "Tell Nick to get $700 so we can bail Mari out too." And Reverend Cecilia is reassuring Mari that we will bail her out. And I'm, well, I don't know what I'm thinking. Maybe I'm not thinking generously. Maybe my culture and trauma is hitting me. I think I was thinking, wait, what? I'm supposed to spend $700 on like some complete stranger, some criminal? Someone who is in jail? I did it because my minister asked me to. And after a very bad night, when I was released into the dark of the city of Seattle at 1:30 a.m. with no one out there, I bailed Mari out. And then I drove her to where her husband was once we found out, in a different city. And I helped bail him out too. And then when we found out where their car was, which was in a 3rd city, impounded, I bailed it out too. And then because they weren't supposed to drive the car, remember the warrants for the arrests for the traffic violations they hadn't paid, I drove them in their car 2 hours out of town to meet up with relatives. And at the end of that long day, I was more than $1,000 out of pocket. I'd had no sleep whatsoever. And I'd spent 12 hours helping these folks back home to their kids. And after all of that, you might think I felt exhausted and spent and poor. But actually I didn't. I felt great. I felt full of energy. I felt like I had been part of something so big. I had lent a hand to 2 people who I learned over the course of the day were not criminals at all, but victims of a system that punishes poverty. And I had gotten 2 wonderful, loving parents back home to hug their 3 little girls, and I had made new friends. I've seen them like 7 times since then. And at the end of that day, I didn't care about the money at all. So in my role as your stewardship consultant, I'm asking you to consider sharing some of your money stories. I'm asking you to share them with each other, with these beloveds on whom you are on this beautiful path. And I invite you to consider forming a small group ministry about money and how it impacts your life. To share how money has impacted all of our lives. You are a congregation that makes things happen. You have an opportunity to direct the flow of your money like the current of a great river toward the well-being of the beautiful Palouse. You can and will build a facility that will house this beloved community with radical welcome. I know you will. L'shana tova tikatevu. May you be inscribed for a good year. I leave you with the wise words of Margaret Wheatley from her book, Turning to One Another. There is no greater power than a community discovering what it cares about. Ask what is possible, not what is wrong. Keep asking. Notice what you care about. Assume that many others share your dreams. Be brave enough to start a conversation that matters. Talk to people you know. Talk to people you don't know. Talk to people you never talk to. Be intrigued by the differences you hear. Expect to be surprised. Treasure curiosity more than certainty. Invite in everybody who cares to work on what's possible. Acknowledge that everyone is an expert about something. Know that creative solutions come from new connections. Remember, you don't fear people whose story you know. Real listening always brings people closer together. Trust that meaningful conversations can change your world. Rely on human goodness. Stay together.